Hello everyone, this is Victor Dantas here from the Zero to Hero Academy. Over the years, we have helped multiple professionals either get into the Power Platform market or some of the seasoned professionals within the industry up their game within the low-code technologies. And we are here to announce that we have a special program coming up between March 19th and May 30th. This is the Power Pages and AI Zero to Hero Mentorship Program. Join us, click on the link, access the lessons. You know how we do it. Live lessons on Teams, and then the recorder goes up to YouTube and you can follow if you are in different time zones, but we prefer it to join it live. Connect, ask questions. So go ahead, invite your colleagues, your dad, your mom, your grandpa. Let's everybody join the fun. All right, we'll see you there. Take care.
This is the whole message of Zero to Hero. It isn't about classifying people by the knowledge that they detain or they have at any single moment, but to showcase that anybody can grow their skill level. They can grow their craft to become heroes. It's my life story, and it's the life story of so many others. So we would love to give that back to the community. And thank you again, Cheryl, for doing that.
Thank you, Victor. Right, I'm going to start with a couple of slides just to outline really what I'm going to say today. But then I'm just going to go to showing stuff and really explaining some of what I've learnt about multi-language pages and co-pilots, and hopefully I can help pass some of that on to you. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly share my screen for a minute. Okay, so hopefully you are able to see my screen. Victor, if you could just let me know, that would be great. Fabulous, thank you. So yeah, the sessions that I'm going to run today and on Thursday of this week are going to be all about multi-language pages and co-pilots. This session today is very much a beginner's session. So if anyone, just to set expectations, if anyone is already familiar with how to begin to install the multi-language capabilities for pages and co-pilots, probably not the session for you, because I'm going to go into a bit more of the detail about things like localizations on Thursday's session. Okay, but for today, for anybody who has not used multi-language pages or co-pilots, hopefully I've got something for you and perhaps we can learn something together. So thanks very much, everyone, for coming along. I really do appreciate it. As I was just saying to Victor, you know, having been somebody who started out really as knowing almost nothing about portals as they were then. You know, I used to come along to the Zero to Hero sessions, and yeah, I benefited from all of the goodness that my heroes, you know, Victor and Ulrika and Franco and Nick and, you know, just all of the greats have really given me a little bit of knowledge, a lot of support, right, and some confidence. So yes, thanks to all those greats, and thanks to Victor for inviting me to come along today. So I'm Cheryl, as Victor has said. I have a couple of mantras that I sort of go by. One is that it's never too late, right? Because I never came to the Power Platform until I was quite well over 50 years old, right? But I love it, and you know, I've made it my career, and I'm doing okay, right? But I like to continually learn, which is why I love these sessions. And also, I I believe that we rise by lifting others, right? And again, it's fantastic for me as somebody who has received so much help and support from heroes to come along and to be able to pay some of that back, I guess, or forward. I don't know, but yeah. And it's a fantastic thing for me to be able to do. If anyone who's not connected with me would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, those are my details there on the screen. I do have a website. It's got a little bit of a blog on it. I don't have an awful lot of Power Pages at the moment. I've got loads and loads of stuff actually in draft, and I'm sort of promising myself that once I've got these sessions out of the way, I'm going to publish them. So hopefully you'll be able to drop by and see a little bit about what I've learned and what I hope to pay forward. So as I've mentioned, today's session is pretty much going to be a beginners type session. So what I'm going to cover is I'm going to talk a bit about, the why of multi-language websites. Why, why would we put the effort into, because it is some considerable effort. Why would we put the effort into building these sites out? How the languages actually work within Power Pages. We have to remember, obviously, that we rely on the Dataverse to give us some of our Power Pages goodness, right? And because of that, there are some things that we have to do in the Dataverse to enable our languages within Pages. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how to add a language in Power Pages. Okay, perfect. And then I'm going to go on to the sort of the beginner side of multi-language bots, right? Talk about why we would be interested in those, a little bit about the transition from sort of Power Virtual Agent to Copilot and what the Copilot Studio could do for us. And then we're just going to talk about how we would go ahead and add a Copilot. So hopefully that is what everyone is expecting or would expect from a beginner's session about those subjects. Okay, cool. So this is my this is my portal on the screen that I've built for the purposes of these sessions. I'm quite glad, I don't know, let me see who's here. I'm really concerned that Franco and Ulrika are going to come along and check out this styling, which is not great. But this was just something that I've put together really so that I can talk through some of the things that I would like to cover in this session. So the first thing that we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about why we will be interested in multi-language sites. Okay, so I'm just going to actually stop sharing my screen for a second because I want to talk to you about my recent experience of multi-language websites. Okay, so recently, as I was just telling Victor, I have been planning a great big holiday in Italy. And because of that, I have been booking things using websites, websites that are based actually in lots of different European countries. And I have had very much varying success with those websites, right? And some of those websites, I found really useful. Many of them I've been able to use the browser, the sort of browser translator to do most of the things that I've needed to do, but not in all cases, right? And in some cases, it's been really, really very painful, right? So obviously many organizations trade globally. And one of the things that, we need to do for our customers is we need to meet them where they are, right? This is something that we do in all of the systems that we sort of develop, whether that be, our enterprise dynamics, or it's our Power Pages, or it's our Power Apps, things that we develop for people to consume and to use. We always need to make sure that we understand that user experience and we really genuinely meet those people where they need to undertake the activities that we're trying to provide them the apps for, right? As I've said, browser translations, they don't always give the expected results. So recently I've been trying to book stuff to travel around Europe. So I've been using a motoring website, right? And this motoring website is quite a reputable motoring website. And one of the things that I came across on this motoring website when I was trying to understand what the requirements are for me as a driver when I travel around Italy, told me that I had to get a CH label, right? And, you know, I'm like, what on earth is a CH label? And what has that got to do with driving, right? And I just was scratching my head for ages and ages and ages. And then I don't know where I went away and I don't know, made a cup of tea or something. And then it occurred to me, hang on a minute, CH. Are they talking about the code for Switzerland, right? Which is CH. And I went back to the website, and sure enough, the website was sort of like it was based in Switzerland, the organization, and they had obviously within their content, they had been talking about, you know, a CH, a country identifier of CH because they're in Switzerland, right? And the browser had sort of translated that incorrectly. So yeah, that's just one instance that I've had recently where, you know, the browser translations didn't really work for me. They made me go away and look at all sorts of other websites. And if that had been an organization that was trying to sell me something, right, they'd have lost me at that point because I'd have gone somewhere else where my experience was a whole bunch easier, right? So yes, we need to meet people where we are. And one way of doing that is to provide multi-language websites for them in their own language. Okay. Okay, so I've talked a little bit about, you know, why we want to do that. Let's talk about what we need to do to make those languages work in the situation we're in. So we're talking about creating a multi-language experience on Power Pages. And as I mentioned when I did the intro, we need to also consider when we do that, we also need to consider multi-languages in Dataverse because everything we do on Page is actually built from the Dataverse. So when we think about multi-language websites, we have to appreciate that there are two sides to adding a language to a Power Pages site. One is the Dataverse side and one is the Portal Pages side, right? So yes, because a lot of the things that we use in our Power Pages sites are actually built in the Dataverse. So for instance, our forms, our lists, you know, things that we are pulling through from the Dataverse, things that relate to entities within the Dataverse and components within the Dataverse. We have to understand that, you know, we have to do something in Dataverse to make sure those things display properly within our Pages site. The other aspect is, obviously, we have things that just relate to Power Pages. So we have things like, you know, headers, footers, web link sets, you know, things like that, you know, the navigation stuff. And we need to ensure that those things come across properly in the additional language or languages that we want to use. Okay, so if we take Dataverse first, when we install the Dataverse into an environment, we select something called a base language, right? And that base language determines the default settings for all sorts of things, not just for the language, but for things like, you know, regional and other options, right? And once the important thing for us to understand about this is once we've installed that Dataverse, that base language is set and cannot be changed until or unless we decide to potentially, and I'm not advocating this at all, delete that Dataverse environment and set it up again. Okay, so we just need to give some thought, I guess. If we know that we're going into a project and we're going to have multiple languages within our delivery of this particular project. So for instance, if we know that we've got offices globally and, you know, we're going to have different languages being used, probably give some thought to, you know, the base language that we set. And I mean, there are other things that we're going to consider when we think about that. We're going to think about all sorts of things about, like, you know, what we want our currency to be and stuff like that. But, you know, just bear in mind that once that base language is set, we can't change it. But what we can do is we can add additional languages. Okay. it's important to remember that although we add additional languages, that base language is all the same, always the same. So we will sort of be adding translations of that initial base language. So there are some things that we are going to need to do to make sure those translations sort of work their way through to the interface. Okay. No, I'm not sharing my screen at the minute because I'm talking a lot. I didn't do slides for this, but I'm going to show that actually. I'm going to show where that's set just in a second. I just wanted to give a bit of the background on sort of how we do that, but I will show that right now. 1 second. Here we go. So me share. Okay, so hopefully you should be able to see my screen here. So where do we add languages when we're talking about Dataverse? Okay, so these are my environments. This is my dev environment. Okay, so it's just a developer program environment tenant. Sorry, I've got various different environments set up. If I wanted to add a language into one of these environments, I would just select the environment and I would go to the settings for that settings area for that environment. Okay, as you can see, hopefully, I have a product option here with a number of things underneath it, one of which is languages. So I would just go into that product area. I would select languages and hopefully now I'm quite relieved that one of the reasons that I didn't want to go to this straight away was because earlier on this evening, I installed a language, right? And if you've done this before, you'll know that it takes ages to install. So in my mind, I was slightly panicking because I thought, oh no, that won't have installed yet. But I think it's finished installing, so that's all good. As I mentioned, I was installing this language. I was installing French. I've already got my base language is English. I've already installed Italian, which you can sort of see. I'll show you on my portal. I was just installing French so that I could go through the process and sort of show you how that works when I install it to the portal, right? The thing to be really wary about when you install a language pack, as they're called, in Dataverse, is that it takes a long time, right? And whilst you install that language pack, you may or may not have difficulties within your Dataverse environment. So it's always best normally to install things like language packs outside of like office hours, right? Or maybe think about scheduling some potentially some downtime, or just don't have sort of critical things happening at the same time that you're installing these language packs, as they're referred to. Okay, so I've now installed French as well as Italian to my Dataverse. Okay, but obviously I've not installed that to my Power Pages yet. As I've said, we install these in the admin center. Okay, and to be able to install a language, you have to be a system administrator or a customizer. Okay, so you have to have those permissions to be able to get to that option to install the language. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do, having enabled the language in Dataverse, is we are going to enable the language in Power Pages. Okay, the other things that we would need to do to make this work with the rest of the story, I guess, is after we've enabled the language in Dataverse and enabled it in Power Pages, we need to change the language of our Dataverse components and our Power Pages components, as I've mentioned. Okay. Additionally, we may want to make it possible for our logged in users. So when we go to our website, if I can find my website, we go to our website, if we have users that are logged in, okay, so if we've got authentication on our website and we have authenticated users, it is possible for those authenticated users to select, rather than having to change the language each time on the, on the selector here, it is possible for a logged in user to be able to determine their preferred language from within their profile settings, right? And if we do want our logged in users to be able to do that, then we need to just tweak some table permissions to allow them to set their preferred language. Okay, and I might go into that on Thursday's session. Okay, so we have added a language in Dataverse. As I said, we needed to be a system administrator or customized for that. Cool. And a little bit about the language packs. There are, there are loads and loads and loads of different language packs. If I go back to my dev environment and show you all the languages that are available, we have quite a lot of languages here. I appreciate that not all languages are available as a language pack, right? And there is certainly in the UK, one of the reasons why we might want to install a different language on our website is not just because, we want to meet people where we are. We might actually have a statutory obligation to do that. Certainly in the UK, we have to, for organisations over a certain size that provide services within Wales, for instance, in the United Kingdom, that there's a statutory to provide those services in both Welsh and English. And at this point in time, there is no Welsh language pack, right? Which makes it quite difficult for those of us who are providing services in Wales. We can go to AppSource and we can pick up a product from a company who've specialised in providing a sort of a skin for the Welsh language. But yeah, I mean, if anyone would like to go and upvote the idea on the product page for a Welsh language pack, then please do that, because I'm sure a lot of organisations in the UK would be very grateful. But yeah, there are a number of languages here that we can install straight from within the admin center. Okay, so now what we're going to do, having added that language to the Dataverse, we are going to go and add it into the portal. So normally when we're doing stuff in Power Pages these days, we are blessed with our design studio, right? This lovely design studio here. And we can do loads of stuff in this design studio, right? But one of the things we can't do, unfortunately, if we normally would go to our setup area to add the sort of admin type things. It would be lovely if we could come here and we could, add our languages. But unfortunately, we can't. It's one of those things we do still have to go to the portal management app for, right? And of course, that's opened on my other screen. So I'm just going to go and grab that now. So if I bring this over, apologies for that. Okay. As you can see, I've got a number of websites installed to this environment. And if I wanted to add a language to a particular website, I would have to go to the website record. So for instance, this is the website that I just showed you with the tent on it. I've called it Campolingo. It's sort of like a play on the fact that I've been trying to book campsites in Italy and, the language has not been helpful. So yeah, that's my website for the purposes of these sessions. And as you can see, if we look down the screen, I've got 2 supported languages on here already, one of which is English and one of which is Italian. Okay, so if I want to add another language to my website, I would go to select the new language from my list of options here, and I would add it in here now. in order for something to appear in this list, we have to have done that bit in Dataverse first, right? We have to have installed the language to Dataverse in order to be able to select it from this list. So obviously I've already got English and I've already got Italian, so I'm going to install French. Nice Francais. I like a bit of Francais. And we also have to change this publishing state to published, okay, for it to be visible. So if we do that now, when I save this, sort of behind the scenes, there's all sorts of stuff going on in the background, okay? What is going to happen, and I'll show you this in just a second, is the engine behind Power Pages. Now, I don't know what's going on behind the scenes in Power Pages. We can ask Nikita that maybe. There's all sorts of code running, and what it's doing is it's creating components for us, okay, that are relative to the language that we've just installed. And we're going to have a little look at some of those. Actually, I can show you definitely the Italian ones because they're all going to be there already. Okay. So as you can see, we've saved the record. A few things of note. The display name is Francais. At the moment, I could change that if I wanted to, and the language code is FR French, and I guess these are ISO language codes. I haven't really given that an awful lot of thought, but I'm assuming, probably dangerously, that's what they are. Okay, so as I said, in the background, loads of stuff is happening, and what is happening is that for a lot of our portal components, our pages components, sorry, Power Pages is creating records. Okay, it's creating records for things like, if I just go back here just to double check, this is as a supported language now. It's creating records for things like our web link sets, right? So if we go into the web link sets, and if we look at possibly, the number of web link sets that we now have. So the web link sets, for anyone who is not aware, control sort of like the navigation within pages. Okay, so if we look at, say, the default web link set, which is the default appearance of links within our website, you'll see we now have on our Campolingo site, which is the one that I've built for the purposes of these sessions, we have now got our base English one. Actually, let's just order it so we can see it properly. There we go. So within Campolingo, we've got a number of different default sites, okay, with different languages. So if we go into one of these, and if we go into, for instance, the links for the French one, you'll see we don't have an awful lot. So what we need to do is we need to, once we've installed our language within the portal, and this is probably still doing stuff in the background, to be honest. If I go into the Italian one, actually, it's probably a better example. Here we go. So if we go into the Italian one, here's one that I sort of made earlier, okay? So what I've done is, normally when you go into the, when the Power Pages engine sort of behind the scenes has created all these additional components for us for the additional language. And if I just actually go back to the French one, I don't know whether it would have had a few more yet, but you'll notice if I go into that default navigation, and if I check the links, it's in English, right? And sort of, so Power Pages doesn't know, it isn't able to sort of translate for us what we want that to be, right? So if we want to make it, the appear in the other language, we have to go back, as I've done with the Italian one, into here, and we have to update these links to have, the correct translation. I would really, really dearly love if this was available, you know, if at some point it is going to be available in the designer. I know it is, right? And at that point, hopefully, you know, we can open up our Copilot and we can, you know, do our translations maybe within, you know, either the portal management app, but, you know, hopefully the designer. Okay, so we've talked about things like the components of the website. Okay, so as I've said, we have to think about when we install these languages, we have to think about the components and we have to think about the content also, right? So when we're talking about content, obviously we have, you know, if we are thinking about content, our content is sort of pretty much held within our web pages, right? So if I go into, so for instance, the Campolingo web page, and I go into here now, I've got in this section here under localized content where if we only have English, we're only going to have one set of localized content, right? I've now got 3, okay? And so this would enable me to go in and I could potentially update that content directly from within this code here, right? What I would say we probably want to do is we probably want to use our content snippets for things like that, right? Because when we go to the content snippets, you'll see that, again, additionally, if I, let me see what I've got on here, probably got, oh, we go, here we go. So here's a content snippet that I created for this website, right? As you can see, if I go to the website itself, which is on one of these, there we go. If I go to the website itself, I've got sort of a strap line here. It's like, it's just something really cheesy I thought up just for the purposes of this, because it's sort of like, you know, I'm going to be living my dreams this summer. So yay for me. So I create that as a content snippet, right? And I created it in English. But on my Italian Italian version of that strapline, that is, I've translated that to Italian. So when I go to my web page, and if I switch that to Italian, it's probably not going to render in the right color, but it has gone to the Italian version, right? So in that way, we can quite easily actually manage the content aspect of our sort of multi-language websites, right? So I would recommend obviously using content snippets for where you want to be sort of replacing that content. And then again, as you can see, this one's just installed, which is the French version. And yet it only understands English at the moment because that's the base language. So it's going to be up to me, or, you know, whoever is maintaining this language, to go in and update that. Now I am going to, as I've mentioned, this is really a sort of like a taster or a beginner session. I'm going to talk about something called localizations, which I've sort of touched on a little bit there. I'm going to talk about that in a bit more depth on Thursday, right? And that really is going to help us with updating, I guess, a lot of these things. But for today, I just wanted to go over why we would want to install multiple languages and how we would go about doing that. Okay, so if you want to know more, you're going to have to come along on Thursday, right? So the next thing that we were going to talk about, if we go right back to the beginning of the session, is that we were going to talk a little bit about Copilot, right? And I'm just fishing for my agenda, which is here. So yeah, so what we said was we were going to talk about multi-language bots. We were going to talk about why we would be interested in multi-language bots. And we were going to talk about Copilot, and we were going to talk about adding a Copilot. Right, okay, so I'm just going to flick back to, actually, let me just go to my website. So when we think about bots and why we would obviously want to have a bot, the chatbots have been around for a good long while, right? They're responsive, they're easy to use, they improve the user experience, right? They allow or have allowed us in the past to create topics that we believe that our users may be interested in. They've come a long way, right? So when we used to talk about chatbots, we would talk about things like they would be called Power Virtual Agents, and actually, Power Virtual Agent was a standalone product within Power Platform, and we were able to create bots within Power Virtual Agents. We were able to add them to our Power Pages sites, and they would provide this lovely chat functionality. And if I click open here, you can see that I've been testing stuff, not particularly successfully at this point in time. This is my bot. It's called Campo, and Campo is just a hark back to somebody that I used to know a very long time ago who loved camping, just like me. And so we can install these bots on our websites. So we've been able to do that for a long time with Power Virtual Agents, but times have sort of changed, right? The process for adding a bot onto a portal has changed. We now have something called Copilot, which we've been talking a lot about recently, okay? And that is like it's I think the official phraseology, and I've got this written down somewhere, which I'm just trying to find. Yes, it's a graphical low-code tool for creating and maintaining copilots. But basically what it does is it helps us to create something called a generative AI powered chatbot, right? A conversational chatbot that can answer questions for us based on the content of our Power Pages site or other Power Pages or other sites, actually, okay, which is pretty phenomenal. And it allows us to do that without us going through, as I've mentioned, back in the days of Power Virtual Agent, we had to set up topics, we had to, we had to do all these greeting things that I'm testing here. I had to do all those. I had to create sort of like logic trees and but we don't have to do that anymore because we've got Copilot, and Copilot does all the heavy lifting, right? And all we have to do is point Copilot at our Power Pages site or at, an anonymous sort of experience, and the Copilot does all the heavy work. So as we've talked about recently, Copilot is not just available for Power Pages. It has its own studio, and actually, if I could find the link, I would open it up. I probably got it open. Here we go. Yes, I do. So this is what it looks like. So this is Copilot Studio. And this is me inside my bot, and I'm looking at localizations because I'm actually prepping for Thursday. So when we add a bot, if I go back to, if I close that one down, if I go to here, if I go back one, there we go. So yeah, we can have a number of different bots. There we go. That's what I was looking for. I've got loads here because I've been playing with it for a few weeks because obviously I want to prepare for this session. But they are super, super easy to set up with the Power Pages experience, and I'm going to quickly walk through that now. Okay. As I've said, it just takes a matter of minutes. We go to our, if we want to create it rather from our design studio than from within Copilot, okay, It'll live within Copilot, but our experience when we create it from the design studio, the experience is super, super, super easy. So that's what I'm going to show you today. But then on Thursday, I'm going to hop back into the design studio and go through a little few more of those advanced configurations that I was just hovered over then. Okay, so hopefully that you'll be interested in that. Okay, so we're going to go into integrations, and we're going to add a Copilot onto our site. And then basically, I'm not sure if it's going to want me to, yeah. Because I've already done this, it's sort of already clicked. Basically, all you have to do once you go into here is you have to click this on, right? And it will begin to create your Copilot for you. It does take, you know, I've set up a few of these lately, as you could see when I went into the Copilot studio. It does take a little while for it to set up, right? Not as long as the language packs, it has to be said, because they really do take some time. But yeah, it does take a few minutes. So, you know, maybe just be prepared to do something else whilst it's provisioning, all right? But once it's set up, it literally does everything for you, right? So yeah, you just add your Copilot, you click create your Copilot, and that's it done. Okay. And once you've done that, literally, this is what you get. You get, you know, not that one, because that's the wrong, that is the wrong one. Let's just go back to here. You literally get this thing which is ready to go. So this is the one that I created with my design studio here, as you can see. I just added this thing here, and yeah, it just created the bot for me straight away, which is pretty phenomenal, I think. So why would we not do that? Okay. So once we've set this up, that Copilot will search your site for answers to customer queries, right? So, you know, if you go into that Copilot and you start asking it things, it will return the answers for you. Just as I mentioned just now, just to be aware, there are two levels of searching that this Copilot does, right? So for people who are, and I'm in Italian here, which is not helpful because I can't even understand what that says. For people who are not authenticated, so for your anonymous users, okay, Copilot will use Bing search, right? So it'll use Bing and it'll just go out and it'll find stuff that it's got access to, right, for responses. But for content that requires authentication, so things that you have secured using permissions and stuff, it's going to use Dataverse Copilot for indexing that search. Now, as I've mentioned, Copilot is not just for Power Pages. Copilot, it's sort of Copilot sort of is overarching for all of the Power Platform products. So you know, it is using, I guess, all of that goodness from the Power Platform to provide the functionality for Power Pages, right? There are some prerequisites when we're thinking about Power Pages Copilot. At the moment, this is a sort of, I think it's still in preview, and I guess you can confirm that for me, but in my mind, I think it's in preview. At the moment, the environment has to be located within certain geographical regions, right? And I think they are, let me just check because I don't want to get this wrong. Yeah, Australia, Europe, India, UK, or the US, okay? And that's, I guess, as I just glibly glossed over the fact that it was in preview, but just to mention that, because, you know, things that are in preview, as developers, as, you know, as creators, as implementers, I guess, you know, we shouldn't be using preview features in production, right? Because they are subject to change. But yeah, I mean, it is something hopefully that we will be able to use, you know, in production systems very, very soon, right? Currently out of the box, it, you know, it comes with the English language setting. We can add other languages, and we have to be very careful actually that obviously when we're talking about limitations, that if it uses GPT, right? So when it goes out and it finds sort of responses, it won't bring anything back from sort of like restricted websites or things that are blocked by content moderation. And there is a setting within Copilot where you can change the level of that moderation. There is additionally, I will just say this, there is a massive disclaimer on the Copilot Studio website regarding the accuracy of things like medical, legal, and financial responses, because, you know, for very, very complex sort of data, I guess, you know, the context of responses can't necessarily be guaranteed, right? Okay, so other prereqs, yeah, it's saying that, you know, browser language must be set to US English. I'm not entirely sure that's correct, because I read something else that that says it's going to pick up on my browser language, but yeah, I'll double check that for Thursday. Okay. A key thing actually that I didn't mention when I went into setting up the bot was that before you're able to turn it on. So when I was in my design studio, actually here, if your administrator or the environment administrator, tenant administrator, has not enabled a setting which is called publish bots with AI features in the admin center, then you will not be able to do this, right? As I've said, you know, this Copilot uses the Copilot Studio generative answers, and, you know, we need to just be aware that those settings will kick in here, right? When we think about advanced configuration for bots, you know, we can go to, as I've mentioned, the Copilot Studio to do. It's just opened itself on a completely different screen. If I just grab this back, here we go. So yeah, when we talk about these bots, we can click on them properly, and yeah, here we go. Go into them, and we've got all sorts of, you know, other settings that we can configure within the bots. And as I've said, we're going to come to some of these on Thursday, for instance, with particular reference to the localizations. Okay. What else did I want to say about this? Hang on, I'm just going to check in here. I think I pretty much covered that, and the limitations on managing localizations is going to be for Thursday. I think I'm at the point where if anyone has any questions, I'll try to answer them. If I can't answer them today, I absolutely promise I will take them away and I will answer them on Thursday. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen right now. Are there any questions? I love Victor's comment about using previews in production. Okay, brilliant, lovely, Nikita.
Yeah, I believe Monica is typing. Monica, feel free if you want to do it through the mic, it's okay as well.
I had no question. I was just going to say thank you so much, Sheryl. This is great. I didn't know about languages, but I'm going to experiment today now.
Yeah, I mean, it's so easy. I mean, preparing for this, I mean, I knew a little bit about multi languages. weirdly, before I learnt Power Platform, I was an ITSM consultant for years. I did support consultancy, and I was asked to go and work for Microsoft Partner and sort out their service management. And one of the aspects of the service management I needed to sort out was their support portal, which was actually, an ADX Studio portal back in those days,
Mhm.
And I just looked at it, I'm like, and what we did was we got a third party in to sort of help do it, because I was like, I don't get this. So
It
it's really
was.
nice.
Yeah,
It's
it
really
was really
nice.
complex. Yeah, I actually I remember being in the team. I worked for ADX on the services branch, and I remember when the product folks released the concept of multi-language, and I just wish they had used maybe a separate table for the language representation on page content, like page copy.
Yeah.
Right now, the web page can be the main page, and then you have localized page records of the same data type. So sometimes there's confusion there, but yeah, I remember those days. Um, yeah, no, this is a masterpiece, Cheryl. Thank you so much for putting this together. You walked step by step, starting from the setup of different languages within the Dataverse side of things, and then portals. So that was a masterpiece. Really appreciate you doing that. Can't wait for the next lesson. Let's see if anybody else has question, comments. Um, I know Nikita's here. Franco is here too. Um,
Oh no, he didn't see that horrific website.
In
that's
fact,
a nice
it
forum
reminded
here.
me of some scenarios from learning Italian when I was younger. I was just thinking all the time, dove è il campeggio? È una festa di persone. But oh, nice. Looking forward to the next one and seeing those localizations.
Yeah, yeah. I'll be getting those done for Thursday.
Awesome, awesome. Alrighty then. If there are no questions at this time, we can uh end now.